Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to my cabin once again. Now, the Nike Vomero 17, is it any good? Well, I've done 45 miles in it now, so I thought about time I give you my thoughts. So let's do some good point, bad point, just to get this video kicked off. So, good point, they are very comfortable, I must say. Bad point is they're actually quite difficult to run in, I find. I don't think they're a very fast shoe at all. Well, they're not really meant to be, but if you're looking for a shoe that's kind of a successor to the Nike Pegasus Turbo 2 here, then despite the fact they both got dual foams, they're very much different. This one is 100 grams lighter than this one. One bad point for me is that the build quality is a bit suspect on the weights. This one on the left here is 380 grams and the one on the right is 365 grams. Now I can't honestly say that I've got the wrong size. They both appear to be UK 13 my size, so not sure what's going on there. A good point, depending on how you view it. I think this is the shoe designed squarely for easy day miles, so that may also be a bad thing. I think sometimes it's a good thing to have a shoe that's not too much sort of exciting, doesn't have a carbon plate in it, doesn't make you feel like you want to sort of sprint down the road. In fact, in my 45 miles, I think I've only done 1 mile that even approached somewhere vaguely near my marathon pace. So there was a guy on a forum said that they came alive at half marathon pace. Well, unfortunately, after 45 miles, maybe I'm just a bad runner these days. Haven't even managed to get there. I think I did one Strava segment where it was a really low-hanging fruit and managed to beat it, but I only had to do about a 7-minute mile to do it, so I don't think that really counts. Good point, bad point. Are they any better than the Pegasus 40 I've got in my other hand here? Well, the Pegasus, although it's sort of not exactly a rock hard firm shoe, it does sort of feel like I've got a bit more response sometimes. And I think perhaps as a sort of a really easy day cruiser, this one is slightly better. If I wanted to actually pick up the pace a bit more, I think the Pegasus would actually do a better job and also give you a slightly more change in your wallet. So is the Vomero 17 a better Pegasus? Well, yes, in the sort of way that it's a bit more sort of comfy, but in the other way, is it actually a better running shoe? And I think that's a bit of a debatable one. I think it might be sort of the case that the Vomero 17 is a better shoe for walking around in, although the Pegasus 40 did very well for that as well. So let's have a quick look at the actual specs of the Vomero 17. Okay, we've got a dual density foam situation going on here. We've got ZoomX on the top here, sort of the black bit and the white bit, and the foam on the underside is what's called Cushlon 3. I think that's basically Nike's sort of more inferior foam, and they say it's a bit firmer. So basically you've got almost like the Cushlon 3 providing a sort of pseudo plate for the ZoomX. I think if you've ever tried the Invincible and how sort of squishy soft that is, then you would know that just having a shoe totally made of ZoomX would be like really sort of unstable. So this one has the sort of familiar ZoomX feel to it to a certain extent, because when you actually get going you can feel that sort of slightly sort of pushed down, but not so much like you get it back like you do in the Vaporfly. So it's a bit disconcerting, I find, with these sort of everyday shoes from Nike, that with the ZoomX in, although it's sort of like nice and sort of like squishy soft, it's almost like too soft. So this Vomero, I'd say, is a bit of a compromise between this and the Invincible. It doesn't feel anywhere near as sort of sinking and not like coming back up again, but equally that makes it for like a bit of a more of a boring ride. And I also found with the outsole here, it's got quite a nice outsole, very much a Pegasus style outsole. It's going to be quite good for a bit of off-road trail on a firm trail, as long as you don't want to get it too muddy, of course. But having said that, the sort of the rubber on the outsole does make it sort of a slightly firmer fitting. So it's kind of a weird shoe in a way, because it sort of feels firm on one sense from the sort of the rubber on the outsole and the Cushlon, and it feels a bit softer with the ZoomX, but it sort of combines together, not really working out really well for either, because I don't really feel that it's like a very responsive shoe. I feel like when I'm sort of going down the road, I'm not getting much bounce back, and equally it's not the most sort of like plush ride you could ever imagine, like in the Invincible. So if you've got really sore legs, this is perhaps not the one to take, but I suppose that's a sort of classic example of a daily trainer. It's not a fast shoe, it's not a ultra sort of ploddy shoe, but it's somewhere in the middle. But in a way that's kind of makes it a bit boring. But does that just mean that on some days that's all you need? I was speaking to Matt about shoes, and he said, well, I think some days you just need to get out in a shoe and get the miles done, which I think is true. Sometimes I've been sort of guilty in recent times of like wearing all my carbon racers for just going easy. Like I was wearing the Adios Pro 3 for quite a bit, and I've been wearing even Vaporflies for that run up the mountain I did on my previous video, and they're quite nice in terms of they're nice and light. But sometimes you just sort of feel like if I put on a shoe like this and it's like 380 grams on one of them, 365 on the other, then yeah, when I put on a faster shoe on a faster day, then I get that bit of a lift. But then you feel like you have to almost like suffer through these days in a shoe like this. One thing I do like about this is that the lockdown is quite good. I think it's quite a nice padded tongue. So for my sort of narrow feet, although the shoe I wouldn't say is overly narrow, and in fact there is a wide version if you've got particularly wide feet. So I would say that this is sort of like a sort of a medium one in the Nike range. A lot of people say Nike shoes are too narrow, but I mean, if anything, I find that sometimes they're too wide. But this one is certainly okay. But on foot, it feels like it's not ultra narrow. The two bands here nearer the heel and the slightly sort of like more open at the front makes a quite nice sort of lockdown, and I feel like I can get these quite tight without cutting all my circulation. I think that helps with this sort of fairly nice padded tongue, but it's not so padded that you feel like you're just wasting sort of material there. It's quite a nice heel. I've been having a few problems with actually on the sides of my feet recently, sort of the ankle area, and this one here you can see that the Achilles is actually sort of going back. If you look at the Pegasus, I think that the Pegasus is almost like, if it's like straight, it's almost like coming back into your heel a bit more. So I think certainly the Vomero is sort of sticking back out a bit. So I've certainly noticed that I'm not really getting any Achilles problems in this one, or not certainly making it any worse, which is quite nice for me at the moment. The upper's comfortable enough, don't have any sort of problems there. Obviously with my narrow foot, I never really get any problems with the rubbing down the sides. Now the drop of the shoe is a classic sort of Nike 10mm shoe approximately, although I've seen some sources say that it's 39.5 in the back and 30 at the front, which is 9.5, isn't it? Although on the Nike buy page on their website it actually puts a 10mm drop, so is a 9.5mm drop really a 10mm drop? Well, I think basically you could say that. It doesn't really feel like a high stack shoe, maybe just more used to it now. And I think another thing of interest is that the ZoomX is definitely sort of like the lesser of the foams in terms of the actual amount of it, especially at the front here. You can see that the ZoomX kind of stops before the end, so if like me you kind of do like a lot of toeing off, perhaps you're not feeling the full sort of experience of the ZoomX in it as well. And you also can see how squashy the ZoomX is. If I do that at the front, I don't know if you can really see that, but the ZoomX layer almost like disappears and just leaves you with a cushion. So you wonder after a while how much the ZoomX will degrade a bit, because there's so little of it there, and it doesn't really feel like you're getting much more of a sort of like bounce off the front. As I said, it's kind of a slow shoe, so yeah, comfortable, but maybe this ZoomX more of a gimmick, more of a sort of a selling feature. I don't know. I mean, there is, as I say, very little of it here, and back here where I don't really land much, then well, is there much point to that either? But yeah, as I said, it's very comfortable and it's wearing fine. I mean, normally I see my most wear here. I'm not seeing any wear there at all at the moment in that one. If you compare that to the 250 miles I've done on the Vomero 16, and you can see there the toe off there, how that sort of the waffles are degrading. Whereas you can see in the Vomero 17, they hardly look like I've touched those at all, which is quite encouraging. Insole for the Vomero 17 is removable, and I've also taken out the one here from the Pegasus 14. If you actually lay them up together, I'm not sure they're exactly the same, but they're certainly exactly the same width as pretty much there, can't you? You can't see any difference there, same length, and they weigh pretty much the same, around about 28 grams for me. The one in the Pegasus does feel a bit more flappy, but maybe that's because I've just had that one a bit longer. So it's interesting that the insoles basically are the same. Obviously you've got a different colour here. And when I looked at the Pegasus Turbo 2 one, as I said, that was exactly the same insole. So the 100-gram weight saving isn't coming from having a very light insole, which I thought was interesting. One thing I did notice about the Strobel in the Vomero 17, because I suppose the ZoomX sits sort of underneath it, it's actually quite soft. You can almost feel that you could actually wear this without any socks. Obviously, you'd then be a bit wider and you may need to go down a size, but contrast that to the Pegasus 40, especially at the heel, without the insole in, it's like rock hard. If I do the same further forward, it does feel a bit more spongy where the airbag is at the front. But certainly with this one, it's a lot sort of more plush material, and in the Pegasus 40, it's just sort of basically sort of a plastic, whereas the Vomero 17 is much more a cushy material, like a cushion. So you can think, oh, actually, perhaps I could actually wear this without even having the insole and insole. Save a bit of weight for sure, wouldn't it? But then it perhaps would be a bit wide for me and perhaps fall off. So yeah, all in all, Vomero 17, it's kind of a shoe that I feel like I ought to be wearing, but don't get particularly excited when I do. I think it's a shoe I'll pursue on with. The previous one, the Vomero 16, I did 250 miles in it. I don't think I'll do a comparison between the two because I think the Vomero 16 is now a bit of a sort of dead dark, and I haven't actually worn it for a while, so I can't really remember. But I did sort of feel slightly similar feel to the 16 and the 17, that both shoes were shoes just to get the easy days done without any great sort of fuss, which I guess is the whole point of a shoe like this. But I think these days we kind of expect so much from our shoes. We kind of expect all shoes to be able to sort of like do everything from like 20-mile runs without feeling anything to like doing like a mile time trial and like every race in between. Well, that's certainly the impression you get from some YouTubers who seem to think that every shoe must be great for everything. Well, I think this shoe is good for going easy miles, and that's about it. If you want any more, then don't expect it. Anyway, so I hope you found this interesting. Is this the shoe that you picked up or thinking of picking up? Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye.